track work at Pride Parkway is finally complete. Well, almost. Hi guys, welcome back to Pride Parkway. I'm Jeff and this is my N-gauge loft layout. If you're new here, basically what I'm doing is building a N-gauge layout, the full size of my loft, approximately 5 meters by 3 meters. If you're not new here, welcome back. It's great to have you along. A little bit of a different video for today. I am going to get almost the last of the track work down on the layout. It's been bugging me for a while, so I thought let's just get it done, let's get it finished. The Peco Points are back in the shops. Managed to pick up some rail join as well, paying silly prices as well. So we've got it done. So I'm going to put a picture in now so you can see what this area here used to look like and what it looks like now. And if you've been following the channel for a while or you're a seasoned modeler, this might be a little bit boring. It's me basically laying some track, talking about my DCC, but the difference in points. I get asked quite a lot about my points, so I put a little section in the video, but I'll tell you where that's at so you can skip ahead if you're not interested on it. But remember, I'm documenting the build of this layout, and that's why I've included this, because this is part of the build, so that's why I've done it. The turntable is kind of in. I've cut the hole, I've bought the turntable. That's the last piece of work, track work, that's to be done on the layout, is to get this turntable, this Peco turntable in, wired up, and the lanes coming off it all in place. But that'll be in a future video, because that's not something that's urgent for just now. As always guys, please leave any comments, thoughts, suggestions down below, and all the nice ones I'll get back to. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you're not new here, hit that share button, and let's get straight on with it. Parkway. So today I am going to start work on all of this track work that's at the back of the layout here, on the countryside, that still needs doing. I was hoping to get this done earlier this year, before it got too hot up in the loft, but obviously lockdown happened and I was working on things that I already had the supplies that I needed, and I was missing some track work that I needed for the back here, predominantly points, but I also was missing a turntable, hence that piece of round paper there. Now this back area is actually two scenes, for anybody who's new to the channel and not sure about why it looks like this. This here is the scene break, and there'll be a load of trees there to separate the two areas. But what you have first of all is what's going to be the heritage yard area, and that's basically to give me somewhere to store the couple of steam trains that I have. I don't have a huge amount, but you know, I've got a couple and I do want to make them a feature on the layout. So what we have here is the two branch lines which come up here, through a crossing and into, I've got a three-way point there and a normal right hand point there, and then you've got the two lines that continue down here. Now what we're going to have here is we're going to have a point coming off, which will connect to another point, and that will give me two lines here to store two rakes of coaches, and then this line will come into the turntable where we're going to have the engine shed and a couple of other sidings here that I can use for the heritage line. Nice and simple. That's a card kit down there. I can't remember who made it. I got it from a train show. This here is just a Hornby Little End, I believe that one is. And then the turntable I'm going to be using is the cheap and cheerful Peco turntable. Now, if I was building a steam era layout and I wanted to spend a lot of money, you can get some amazing turntables. You can get some really big, really nice turntables. You can be talking anything from 200 to 500 pounds, to be honest with you, for a good one. And I did look at some of them at that lower end, the 200 pound mark, and I just can't justify it. This was 15 pounds. It's not motorized, but you can buy various different types of fitments to it to motorize it. So somewhere down the line we'll look into that and we'll look to motorize it, but for now I just want to get it in so that I can get the track work done. So we'll have the turntable in there, and then we've got some lines, some roads going off into the shed. Then we continue to come down this double line here, and we'll then get into some point work and then down into the power station. So here is the power station end, and we've got the two lines here coming down, and then what I've done is I've put two left hand, which is just off camera here, and then two right hand points here. That means that I can move trains very easily between these two lines. Then this will continue to come down, and then we're going to have four lines in the actual power station area, and we're going to have one going straight down, another one here which will go straight down, but we're going to put a left hand point and another left hand point in to create those two lines. And then I've got some Y points right at that end there. There'll be one on each of the two lines. So the idea being a train can drive in, drive through here, dump on the load of coal for the power station. When the train gets to the end, it'll uncouple, it'll move onto the head shunt, and then it'll come back on the empty line and pick up the train to move out, and I'll be able to do that operation on two different lines. The other thing that I'm going to be including is I'm going to be using the Dapple Easy Shunt system. Now you'll have to excuse these ones, they're a bit grotty because they've been took off my old layout, but that is some magnets from the Dapple Easy Shunt system. Now I use the Hunt couplings on my fixed rakes and my HSTs, but on this kind of stuff what I would do is, and I'll show you on two hoppers there, and actually these are fitted, so that's perfect. So you've got a Hunt coupling there and a Hunt coupling there, which shows the wrong polarity. I've just got these ones laid around, but basically on the rake I would have maybe 6 of these at a time, so they'd be magnetic together, and then at each end it'll have one of these Dapple magnetic couplings, which hopefully the camera's picking that up and you can see it, and then that enables me to do a little bit of shunting over here in the power station. They're just there because I've been working out how long everything is. Now when it comes to track work, as you may know if you've been following the channel for a while, I use Peco Code 55 Streamline Track Unifrog Points. Now you can get Unifrog, Electrofrog and Instafrog, and I've had a couple of people ask me what is with the Unifrog points. So in just a second I'm going to quickly take you through what the difference is between the three of them, just for the people that have asked. If you're not interested, just skip forward a little bit on the video if you already know what your points are. Now just to point out, I am not one of those people who plan my track work using computer software. I have got it, I've got SCARM on the laptop, and I just found it quite confusing, to be honest with you, when I was trying to use it. I've always wanted to keep my track work simple. I don't want to make things overly complicated, and actually I find with using the streamline track you get these 1 yard lengths, and I just work them, I bend them into shape, and I just play around until I come up with something that I'm happy with, and that's how I plan my track work. So it's nothing scientific, it's just a bit of trial and error and playing. This track has been laid out for the last 6 months probably, so I've kept looking at it and tweaking things and moving things around, and I'm a big fan of these, which you get on the Peco website. You can just download them, and again you can just put them around, play with them, and it saves you buying loads of points that you might not need, because remember, points aren't cheap, and that's why I like these little cutouts that you can just use. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear everything off this side of the layout. Now this is just polystyrene on here, so it's not terribly strong stuff. Sorry, I'm shaking the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the track off. I'm going to take a couple of pictures on my phone so I can remember what the track layout looks like, and then I'm going to use some paper to create a template of this size of this, and then I'm going to cut some 3mm plywood to fit on top of the polystyrene, and then we'll give it a good old wood glue and foam glue over the top of this all the way along, and then we'll weigh all the plywood down till it dries, and then we'll work directly on top of that. Now just one thing to point out, if we look along here, we've got the Woodland Scenics foam track bed that I use, and I use that because I use that and copy decks to put the track down, because it reduces some of the noise that you get. There's always a big debate about using cork, not using cork, using foam, all that kind of stuff. I use this Woodland Scenics track bed, it works for me, I'm happy with it, and I use copy decks to put it down. This back area, because it's going to be really old, not a main line so to speak, I don't need a ballast shoulder, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the track straight down to the plywood, and because I'm using 3mm and because this is 3mm foam, it'll basically just sit in this area and it'll bring the track to the same height as this area where the ballast shoulder is. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, it will when I start working on it. So yeah, let's get this cleared and let's get the wood cut to shape and glue down. So following on to the video that I did of the storage yard here on Pride Parkway, I had quite a few questions from people asking me about the Unifrog points. I talked quite a lot about the fact that I had some Electrofrog points that I was using, but my preference now is Unifrog, and people asked me what they were, so I said I'll cover it in a future video, so that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to try and do this as quickly as I can, because otherwise it can get a bit long. But one thing I did want to point out is, if you're new and you're a little bit confused by these kinds of things, if you pick up the Peco book, which is kind of guide to engage modeling, I didn't show it in the video because the book will be copyright protected, and yeah, I just don't want to risk that happening. So I'll put a link underneath to Amazon so that if you want to have a look at it, you can. If you want to buy it, you can just click straight on the link and get it. Now, three different types of points. You've got Insulfrog, Electrofrog point, and Unifrog. Remember, I'm talking Engage, I'm talking Code 55, as well as getting the three different types. So I said Insulfrog. Now I don't have one, so we've got a little drawing of one because I'm not going to buy a point I don't use just for the sake of a video. Then we have an Electrofrog point, and then we have a Unifrog. And those points come in short, medium, or long. And I only use, I'm just going to move the camera down ever so slightly. There you go. And I only use the medium radius ones. That's just my preference on the layout. But if you've got a small layout, you might want to use short. Or if you don't have very many points, you might want to use long. Now, with these, if you're modeling in double O gauge, you'll find people do modifications to the points. Peco saying N gauge, you don't need to do that. So therefore, it's really important that you're using the right point. Now, for the purpose of my demonstration, I have two tracks here, just like you would, and to represent them being wired up on the layout, I have drawn red and black lines next to them to show which rail will be positive and which will be negative. My layout is DCC, but most of what I'm saying is in principle, most of what I'm saying is relevant to both DC and DCC. Now, first up, we have Insulfrog. Now, with an Insulfrog point, what's going to happen is you're going to apply your power to the bottom. So you're going to have your positive on this side and your negative on that side. You might not, you could do it the other way if you wanted to, but to make life easier, I always do black to the back. And what happens is your power is coming into the bottom of the point, and it's going right the way up that side and right the way up that side. And then when you flick the switch on your points to change directions, these rails in the middle will pick up power from down here at the bottom. Now, where things get a little bit more complicated is you're also going to have power coming in at the top of the point as well, in this little V section in the middle. And if I just connect them, so to speak, to my fake little setup that I've got going on here, what you will see there we go. So once that's connected up, so to speak, on this fake setup, you've got your negative power running there, you've got your positive power running up there, but of course you've got two rails coming in here. Now this one is positive in red, so that rail there will be getting that power, and your negative one coming in here will be getting the negative power. And then on the Insulfrog, you have a big insulated plastic section in the middle, and that basically stops anything shorting out on the layout. Trains run through, runs over the insulated section, no short circuits. However, the insulated section is dead. There's no power in it. So if you're running local slowly, there's a chance that they could stall on here. In fact, they probably will stall on here. So that's an Insulfrog point. That's why I don't use Insulfrog points, because I'm DCC and I like to run trains slowly. And usually if there's a point, it's because it's a junction, it's a side and something like that. And therefore I want the trains to run slowly. Moving on to an Electrofrog point, which is this one here. Now, this has got a green wire attached to the back of it. It doesn't come like that with the packet, but let me explain why. So here is our point. So again, we're going to have the red coming in here, and we're going to have the black power running through on this side. Now with your Electrofrog point, this entire middle V here is made out of metal. There is nothing insulating in there at all. So what that means is when you connect it to the tracks, you're going to have positive coming in on this rail and negative coming in on this rail here. Now that's a problem. As soon as they hit each other, you're going to get a short circuit on your layout. So what you need to do is you need to insulate this metal section, and to do that we use insulating rail joints. Peco SL 311 insulated rail joist, and you put that just on the 2 middle rails, and on all the other rails, the other 4, you would use a metal rail joiner, Peco SL310. And incidentally, if you're using these Unifrog ones, you would just use metal everywhere because that's doing the insulating for you. But on these Electrofrog, we have to insulate the middle section. What will then happen is you've potentially got a dead area here in the middle where the metal is, but what you're going to do is you're going to solder on a wire to the bottom, just like that. You can see where I've soldered that on, hopefully, if I can get the camera to focus. So you can see where I've soldered a drop of wire on there. I would then connect that to a polarity switch on a point motor or a Peco frog juicer, and that will basically put power into this bit depending on which way the loco is traveling on the points, and that'll do the work for you. They're good. They're what I used to use before Unifrog came out. The problem with these is you need to have something powering this middle section to keep them reliable. So move that away, and then let's move on to the Unifrog, my favorite of them all. So this is how it comes out of the packet, and you might notice there's a piece of metal there, just unravels, and that is coming from the frog at the back. So again, just like the Electrofrog, you're going to need to solder on a wire, but because you've got a nice long wire, it's much easier to solder onto that. Again, you're going to have your negative coming in at one side, your positive coming in from the other side. They always say to feed the power from the bottom regardless of what point it is. Now with this, we're not going to insulate anything because there's a tiny piece of plastic just here above my finger, move the finger out of the way, just there, and that does all the insulating for us. So we put this down, and to connect, we're going to use metal rail joiners on all 6 rails, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then what happens is, as the power's coming in here, you've got the negative and the positive, and then they hit this little plastic bit, and it can't go any further down into the frog. Now, the small bit of frog here, let me just bring that back into focus for you to see. This small piece here, just above my finger, that's metal, and that's connected to that wire. Now, if you're going to connect this to a polarity switch on a point motor, or you're going to connect it to a frog juicer, when you run at slow speed, once it hits that little piece there, it'll get the power. However, if you don't use one of them, all of this metal bit up here is still powered because it's bringing the power in from above, so therefore you've got a much smaller area. So if you're not into DCC and you're not going to wire this up to anything, then actually your chances of running a local stalling are really, really slim, because it's just that tiny bit of metal there that has no power until you connect this. Now, I've talked for nearly 8 minutes, and I apologise, but there's no quicker way to explain it. But as I say, if you've got any questions or anything, do a little bit more research online. Take a look at the Peco website. Have a look at that Peco book that I put the link down in the comments below. I'll drop me an email, prideparkway@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to help you with any questions that you've got if I can. Thanks guys, let's get back to. So what I've done is I've laid out white, just normal copier paper. Now you could use newspaper for this. I didn't have any newspaper, so that's why I've just used this white copier paper. It's dead cheap, and I'll tear it up and I'll use it, a scrap paper and just things like that. So I'm not wasting it. So I laid this out, and then I went along with the Sharpie and I created the shape that I wanted. I then cut it out. It's all Pritt stick together. So basically I ended up with one big template, then put 2 sheets of plyboard on the floor, put the template on top, and drew around it to get the shape I needed, and then cut out the plywood using the jigsaw. And sorry, get rid of that paper, it's really loud on the microphone. And I'm now left with the wood that I need. As you can see, I've cut out the hole here for the Peco turntable, and that's ready to go in there. It's a nice snug fit, and just a reminder, it might sound silly, but if you're measuring a hole to put this in, don't measure the outer diameter, measure the inner diameter, because you need a lip for that to sit in. I know that might sound silly, but I almost made that mistake myself, and I wouldn't have had enough plywood, so just to point that out. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to get my foam cutter and go into here where the turntable is going to be. Now remember, I have underneath this foam, under this polystyrene if you're in the UK, there's another baseboard, there's a solid baseboard under there. So I'm just going to go all the way down and then drill a hole in the middle, which will eventually be for wires to go in, and then that gives me plenty of space, a good 3 inches there, for the point motor, not the point motor, sorry, the turntable motor when I eventually get one to fit in there. Then I'm going to get all this glued down, and I'm going to go over all these edges just with a little bit of plaster cloth just to smooth these off, because obviously there's a lip at the moment. And then once that's done, I'm going to get it all painted brown, and then I will come back to you once I've got that done. So as you can see, the plywood all glued down. It had overnight to dry. I've also put some mud rock plaster cloth in here on the sides as well. The whole thing's had a coat of brown paint. It is a slightly different shade of brown to this, but it doesn't matter because it's all going to be covered in grass. It's just a base coat. I do need to go back down and give the mud rock areas a second coat because there's a little bit of white showing through, but that's fine. The main thing was to get the plywood sealed. You can see here where the turntable's going to be, and that's not fastened in, that's just in the hole for now. I won't be showing you how I'm doing the turntable in this video because I want to do more research on that in future, so that'll be its own separate little project and probably a video as well. If you'd like to see that, let me know down below in the comments. What I am going to do now though is get the track work put in. So the track work, that basically all the point work that leads up to the turntable, so I'll just not be wiring in the tracks coming off the turntable just yet. And then the sidings, which is where I'm going to store a couple of steam trains, they can go in because actually I need that storage space now. And then we'll have the tracks continue going down and the track work put into the power station as well. So I've laid all the track out based on how roughly the track plan is going to be, and all makes sense to me. Then what I've got here is my tools. Now, if I'm going to put a little link up in the top corner, the fiddle yard update that I did, and in that it shows you a little bit more about my track lane. But basically I've got a small hammer, I've got Copperdex glue, I've got a couple of different pairs of pliers, I've got the good old Zuron track cutters, I've got a straight track setter, and I've only need a straight on here if I haven't really got any corners that I need to do, and then one of these little Peco 6-way gauge end gauge ones which I use for spacing out my tracks. So they're the main tools that I'm going to need. Over on the workbench I've got the soldering iron on heating up. I'm obviously need a drill to drill through from a dropper wires. I am a dropper wire per length of track as well, and power going into each individual point. So let's get on with it, let's get it done. Hey guys, so you join me at the workbench, and I'm probably going to leave myself open to all kinds short doing this on camera, but never mind, I'm going to do it. And this is not necessarily the right way, the wrong way, the only way. This is my way, and I know you hear YouTubers saying that all the time, but as I'm starting to learn, there's always somebody waiting to pick up on anything you do and say. So I've got here a 1 yard length of Peco Code 55 track. As it comes out the packet, apart from the fact I've just took the sticker off that comes smack bang in the middle of it, what I want to do to this is I want to add 2 dropper wires and basically prepare it ready to go on the layout. What I would do first of all is if you turn it around, now you'll notice one side on the webbing is solid black, so the side here, and then the other side has got little notches cut out, and that's so that you can bend the flexi track. Now this piece that I want's going to be pretty straight, but the way I do it is I always have the bends at the front and the solid piece at the back. So obviously it's upside down at the moment, so if I turn that around to the layout, if you might remember, the gaps are there. When I turn that around, the gaps have now rotated, so the gaps are at the front and the solid bits at the back. Now the other thing you need to do is there's no space to fit any rail joiners on the ends of these, so you need to cut off a couple of sleepers. Now this is going to be a siding, and there's going to be a buffer stop at this end, so I don't need to cut anything off this end, but off the other end I need to cut something off. Now if you look closely, you can see there's always a little notch there after the first 2 sleepers, and all I do is stick a knife through there, and just that'll then just peel off, just pulls off like that, and you've now got a piece at the end for connecting. You'll then just use cosmetic sleepers to fill that in. Halfway down the length of track is where I'm going to attach the droppers. So all I do for where the droppers is going to be is I just remove 1 sleeper. Now again, there's already, if you can see on the camera, There's already a piece missing there. So I'm just going to chop through the webbing there, there, and there. Not sure if that one went through, so do it again. And then just using a pair of pliers, I'm just going to pull that piece out, just like that. Now the thing that I see people say all the time online is when they're trying to solder the track, they can't get the solder to adhere to the metal. It just keeps dropping off. I used to have that problem. What I do now is I use this knife, and this is a bit of a crap knife, to be honest with you. I'm using a cut webbing, and you can see the blade's a bit dirty and rusty and a bit rubbish, but that works fine. All I do is I just rub like that, just to roughen up the metal, and I find I'm not wearing it away, I'm just making it rough, and I'll find then that will let me solder really, really well. Now when I'm cutting mats, I've got a piece of wood, because otherwise the heat will go through the metal rails and through the wooden cutting mat. Trust me, made that mistake before. So I've got a paintbrush with a little bit of flux on it. I'm going to put a drop of flux on the metal there and there. Soldering iron, clean end. Now what you want to do is apply the heat to the metal one at a time, and then add some solder to it, and the flux should make the solder flow across the metal. Get some solder on, and then tap it, and hopefully you can see that the solder is now on the metal. So I'm going to do the same with the other one, and then we'll move on to attaching the wires. So wire strippers, and take the ends off. I don't take it all the way off, I just take a little bit off. And then when you pull it off, there's a multi-strand wire that I use, and just twist it as you pull it off, and it just twists all the little strands together. So it's quite hard for me to show you, but hopefully it's making sense. Then I dip the two wires into flux, and then I put them in my helping hand. I couldn't do any of this work without the helping hand. And then I just want to tin the two wires. So nice clean soldering iron. I'm no expert solderer. I don't do this for a living. This is, this is a hobby, so please don't pick me up on what I'm doing wrong. If you've got any helpful suggestions, then tell me. But I know I'm not an expert. So tin the wires. Now, I used to solder the wires on like that because it was easier to hold. The problem you have then is it just doesn't look very good, because you've got bits of wire sticking out everywhere. So these days I solder the wire that way. Now I just need to make sure that, because I've added the heat, it's possible that some of the heat shrink on this will have gone back. So if it's too long, I just trim it, but actually looking at it, maybe a little bit off. So I just trim a tiny bit off the end, like that. And then I use pair pliers, and I bend it into an L shape, like that. And then this has already been tinned, and the rail's already been tinned, so just dip it in a little bit of flux, and then with the soldering iron, place black goes on the solid one, which is the front. It's because I've got the camera in my face. So get that over the top, add a bit of heat, makes the solder flow, and it should be attached, and it's in a nice straight line. So that means that when I drill a hole in the baseboard, I'll drill one hole there, one hole there, the wires will go straight down and it's out of sight. And because the wire's going that way, it means I can just put a cosmetic sleeper in to fill that gap nice and easy. And then I just give this a wipe with a cloth just to make sure any excess flux or anything's gone before I put it down on the layout, just like that, and it's soldered. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully somebody found that useful. Just my way of doing it, and it does work. You can see there how solid those wires are on the back of that piece of track. Cool, that's it guys. The track is all down, it's all wired up, it's all working, it's all tested. I need to get some buffer stops for down that other end, but I have put a couple of buffer stops in on the coach side and the heritage station. You can see there, it's my class 25 running, and it's all running really, really well. So I'm going to leave that video there. It's been a little bit of a different video. Remember, I am documenting the build of the layout, and that's why sometimes I think I already know how to lay track. Why are you doing this for? And that's the purpose of this video. I hope you found it useful, insightful, bit entertaining, something like that. But as I'm finishing this video, I'm very close to a big milestone for the channel. I'm very close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all of my subscribers, both old and new, for their continued support of just basically watching and following along with me as I build this layout. It's a constantly evolving thing. Things are always changing, and my next video will be something a little bit different. I'm going back to doing some construction work. I'm going to be building a scene break or a scenic break. I did build one a little bit earlier. I'm really not happy with it, so I want to get that done. It's also forecast for a bit of a mini heat wave in the UK for the next few days, so what I need to do is start getting scenic work down on this area, and it's going to be too hot. The glue's going to dry too quick. I'll not be able to get the scenic work done. So slight deviation and something I can work on downstairs on the dining table. As always, guys, a massive thank you. Any comments, thoughts, suggestions, pop them down below, and I will be back just with another video soon. Thanks, guys. All the best. Bye.